The smell of my mother's roast chicken always meant one of two things: celebration or confrontation. Tonight, it was the latter. The scent of rosemary and garlic was thick in the air, a comforting lie against the tension coiling around the dining table. My father sat at the head, a king in his castle of beige walls and polished oak. My older brother Mark was to his right, already a younger, fitter version of him. My mother was a ghost, drifting between the kitchen and the table, her anxiety a constant low hum. I had been waiting for the right moment, but there is no right moment to dynamite your family's expectations. I put my fork down, the clink of metal on porcelain unnaturally loud in the quiet. "I'm not accepting the scholarship to NYU," I said. My father didn't look up from cutting his chicken. "Pass the potatoes, Mark." Mark slid the bowl to him. "Did you hear what Leo said, Dad?" "I heard him," my father said, spooning a heap onto his plate. He's got a comedian's sense of timing. "The joke's not funny, Leo." "It's not a joke," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not going to business school. I'm moving to the city, but I'm going to dance." Silence. My mother froze by the counter, a dish towel twisted in her hands. My father finally looked at me. His eyes, the same dark brown as mine, were flat and hard. He chewed his food slowly, deliberately. A power move I knew all too well. He swallowed. "You're going to what?" "Dance," I repeated, professionally. Mark snorted, a quick, ugly sound he tried to cover with a cough. "You mean like ballet? You're gonna wear tights, little bro?" "It's called contemporary dance, Mark. And yes, sometimes it involves tights," I said, looking straight at my father. "It's what I've been training for since I was 10. It's what I'm good at. It's what I want to do." My father placed his knife and fork down perfectly parallel on the edge of his plate. "No son of mine is going to be a performer, prancing on a stage for pocket change. You have a full ride, Leo, a business degree from a top university, a future, a real future, not a fantasy." "It's not a fantasy," I insisted, the heat rising in my cheeks. "It's a career. People do it. People make a living, a good living." "What people?" he shot back, his voice rising from a low rumble to a sharp crack. "People we know? People from this town? No, it's a hobby for rich kids and a dead end for everyone else. You will not throw your life away for a hobby." "It's not a hobby." The words ripped out of me louder than I intended. "It's who I am. Don't you get that? Everything I do, every hour I'm not in school, I'm training. It's the only thing that makes sense to me." "Well, it doesn't make a damn bit of sense to me," he said, pushing his chair back. "This family builds things. I built a business from nothing. Your grandfather built houses with his bare hands. We don't prance. That word, he used it like a weapon, and it hit its mark. It was meant to emasculate, to trivialize, to reduce my entire world to a silly, effeminate gesture. I saw my mother's pained expression, her silent plea for me to just drop it, to acquiesce. I couldn't. The steel in my spine was new, forged in 1,000 hours of sweat and pain in a dance studio across town, a place they'd never once set foot in. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, my voice now quiet and cold. "But I'm 18. My mind is made up. I'm leaving next month." My father stood up, his shadow falling over the table. "Then you'll go with nothing, not a dollar. You turn your back on this opportunity. You turn your back on this family's support. You're on your own." He walked out of the room. The sound of the den door closing was as final as a gavel. Mark just shook his head, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disbelief. My mother finally moved, her shoulders slumped as she started clearing the untouched plates. Her silence was the cruelest cut of all. That night I packed a duffel bag with 2 pairs of dance shoes, a few changes of clothes, and the $500 I'd saved from a summer job. I was on a bus to New York before the sun came up. The memory of that cold, silent dinner burning in my gut. It was a fuel of sort. The first 2 years in New York were a special kind of hell. My apartment in Bushwick was a glorified closet with a window that looked out onto a brick wall. The radiator hissed and clanked like a dying animal, and the sirens were a constant lullaby. I worked as a barista, a waiter, a delivery guy, anything that paid cash and had flexible hours so I could make it to auditions. And the auditions? They were a meat grinder. I'd stand in a line with 100 other guys who looked just like me, all of us with the same desperate hope in our eyes. We'd be given a number, taught a few counts of choreography in a sweltering, airless room, and then cut down in groups of 10. Thank you, 57. Thank you, 62. Thank you, 68. My number was 68. I heard thank you more times than I heard my own name. Every rejection was a faint echo of my father's voice, prancing for pocket change. There were nights I'd come home, my body aching from a 12-hour restaurant shift, followed by a 3-hour class, and eat cold noodles out of a carton while staring at the brick wall. I'd think about the business degree, the comfortable life, the approval. The doubt was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. But then I would remember the feeling of nailing a sequence, of my body moving in perfect sync with the music, of that fleeting moment of flight in the middle of a leap. That was the only thing that was real. That was the tenderness. The rest, the exhaustion, the hunger, the loneliness, was just noise. The steel was what got me up the next morning to do it all over again. My first break was a non-paying role in an experimental piece in a tiny black box theater in the East Village. I was so broke, I was eating a can of beans a day, but I'd never been happier. Someone saw me in that show. It led to a background dancer spot in an off-Broadway musical. That paid rent. Then came a tour with a small but respected contemporary company. That paid for new dance shoes and better food. I started to choreograph on the side, creating small pieces for my friends, exploring my own voice. I found that I loved building the movement even more than performing it. My style was athletic, raw, full of sharp angles and explosive lifts. It was the opposite of prancing. It was struggle and release, made visible. The calls home were strained. My mother would ask if I was eating enough. My brother would make awkward jokes about my showbiz life. My father never came to the phone. For 7 years, I didn't hear his voice. The big break came from an unexpected place. A music video director saw one of my choreographed pieces online. He hired me for a shoot with an indie band. The video went viral. My work was singled out in reviews for its kinetic, aggressive grace. That led to another video, then another. Soon, ad agencies started calling. They wanted that same energy to sell sneakers, cars, phones. The first time I saw my own choreography in a national commercial during the Super Bowl, I was sitting alone in my now much nicer Brooklyn apartment. It was surreal. It was a 30-second spot for a luxury car. The dancers moved through an urban landscape, their bodies weaving around the vehicle in a powerful, precise ballet. It was my work, my vision. And the paycheck that came with it was more than my father made in a year. I had finally built something. It was my mother who called a few weeks later. Her voice was thin, hesitant. "Leo, your father, he's turning 60. We're having a party, just family, at the house. I know it's a long shot, but I'll be there," I said before she could finish. The drive back to my hometown felt like traveling back in time. The city's concrete and steel gave way to manicured lawns and identical houses. The air smelled of cut grass and chlorine from swimming pools. When I pulled my car, the same model from the commercial, into their driveway, I felt a knot of the old anxiety tighten in my stomach. The party was just as my mother had said. Family. My aunt and uncle, my cousins, Mark and his new wife, and my parents. The conversation was stilted. They asked polite, surface-level questions about New York. They called me the artist. It still felt like a euphemism for the unemployed one. My success was abstract to them, a story from a different world. They couldn't see it, so it wasn't quite real. My father was civil. He looked older, his hair grayer at the temples. He shook my hand, his grip firm as ever, and said, "Good of you to come." We sat at the same dining table, and my mother served the same roast chicken. The conversation danced around my life, never landing on the specifics. It was all, "How's the big city?" and "Staying busy?" I just nodded and smiled. There was nothing I could say that would bridge the gap. Words had failed us 7 years ago. They would fail us again. We were in the living room after dinner, making small talk. My cousin was talking about his recent promotion at the bank. Mark was showing pictures of his new deck. It was a competition of quiet suburban victories. I just sat there, nursing a beer, feeling like a foreigner. The television was on in the corner, the volume low, a basketball game playing. Then the game went to a commercial break. The first few notes of the song were unmistakable. It was the track from the sneaker commercial I had choreographed. On the screen, a group of dancers exploded into motion on a rooftop, their bodies cutting through the air in a sequence of intricate, powerful moves I had spent a month creating and perfecting. It was my work, raw, unapologetic. The room fell silent. Everyone's head turned to the screen. Mark was the first to speak, his voice a disbelieving whisper. "Leo, isn't that—" I didn't answer. I just watched my father. He was staring at the television, his fork loaded with a bite of my mother's lemon cake, frozen halfway to his mouth. His face was a mask of confusion. The dancers on the screen were not prancing. They were athletes. Their movements were a language of strength, precision, and a kind of fierce joy. The camera swooped in, catching the strain in a bicep, the sweat in a brow, the perfect, synchronized landing of a dozen bodies. The company's logo flashed on the screen, one of the biggest athletic brands in the world. The commercial ended. The game came back on, but no one was watching it anymore. The silence in the room was absolute, heavier than anything I had ever felt. It wasn't an angry silence. It was a silence of recalibration, of a worldview being forcibly shifted. My father slowly lowered his fork to his plate. He didn't look at me. He kept staring.